welcome back to another episode of Crypto My God. We're going to ignore everything markets today and hop into a little bit of the legal territory going around Tornado Cash, a privacy tool on Ethereum that has a really major impact in terms of development and freedom of speech and all that fun stuff. Let's get into it. All right, so first and foremost, let's just take a quick intro to what Tornado Cash is. Basically, it's a program on Ethereum that is fully autonomous. It is just code operating on its own, and anyone can interact with it. You definitely do not need the user interface. You can interact directly with the smart contract on Ethereum by going to the Explorer and just inputting the correct data. But if you need a UX or UI, there's also a website that does host it. Now, what you basically do is you input a little bit of Ethereum into a pool that is split amongst many other people. This is called the anonymity set. The more people that contribute, the larger the anonymity set. In response, you get a receipt for the same pool for the amount of ETH that you put in, minus a small gas fee. Now, that receipt can be transferred. You can give it to anybody. It's really just a code, and that allows you to withdraw from that pool. So just think about it as we all contribute a bit of water to a bucket, and you get a cup to withdraw the same amount. Now, the thing is that since its launch in 2019 on the Ethereum mainnet, it proved to be quite popular. During its lifetime, as we can see here, over 12,000 users have made over 160,000 collective deposits, representing almost 3.2 million ETH. At its peak in September 2021, Tornado Cash had almost 230,000 ETH in its pool. So it was very active, very productive. Now, what I want to talk about really is the developers who launched this, because this is about building something executable, which you write in the format of math, free speech, and putting it out on the internet and giving up ownership. They created a tokenized ownership structure with a governance layer underneath, right? You needed tokens to vote on governance. Now, that governance was exploited and they dealt with it, but still, this is the core concept of how do we release something, and what is it when we release information into the world that can be run through a computer program and executed, or 3D printed into the real world like ghost guns. And this is something that we have to deal with as a society, as technology allows us to, again, take things from their most basic format of information and turn them into something very effective. Now, come 2022, the international authorities, the US, they decide that they want to shut down the Tornado Cash system. They're saying, oh, there's a lot of Ethereum being laundered for the North Koreans, and we want to put a kibosh to it. The only problem is, again, this code, autonomous, running on the Ethereum network, can't really be shut down. There's not a way to do it so long as enough people want to keep it up and hosting it and keeping it alive. We saw this with Tor, with Pirate Bay. But that brings us to three developers. There's two that are based out of the US, Roman Storm and Roman Semenov. And the third, Alexei Pertsev, who was in Amsterdam at the time. So they came and they got him. Both Roman Storm and Alexei were picked up pretty immediately. Roman Semenov was out. I believe he is still MIA. So he's a little bit outside of the tail. However, we saw Alexei Pertsev get taken by the Dutch authorities and arrested, and basically he's been maintained in prison for a very long time. Now, recently in 2025, February of this year, he actually got out. He went through trial, was found guilty, and he has enough time to now overturn or to appeal that verdict. And they are letting him prepare this appeal outside of holding. So he's been released as he goes back to appeal this case. And that is something that's happening outside of the US. And of course, they don't have the same protections around freedom of speech as we do. They take these proceedings and they move on to basically come to terms that developing financial privacy tools was today criminalized by the Dutch court. So outside of the US, we're seeing the fall of privacy. Of course, we've been hearing rumors about an EU CBDC, a central bank digital currency. And those are highly transparent money systems that remove all privacy. So this is a pretty scary outcome that we really don't want to be baked into society. Now, Roman Storm, who is a man that I know, I've met him, we've hung out, and good dude, father resident of the state of Washington, and he's been basically fighting the DOJ here in the United States for a while now. They're saying, you helped do all of this money laundering, you wrote this code and put this out into the world. His response is, no, I wrote the code is just math. It's literally algebraic equations that, take capital, mix them, and pull them back out. And he is no longer operating this code, it is autonomous, right? That is the point of the Ethereum network and a lot of what crypto and blockchain was created for. It is privacy preserving technology, and that is foundational to the goals of what we are building. So Tornado Cash gets embroiled in all this crazy stuff. And so Roman, up until a few months ago, has been desperately trying to raise capital for his defense fund. Obviously, it's no cheap feat to go up against the DOJ. They have basically infinite legal resources, and he needs to come forth with a variety of cases as to why he is not beholden to the actions of the protocol itself. He gave life to the protocol, but he does no longer dictates what it does. He does not govern the effects and the outcomes anymore. Previously, anyone writing software was not held responsible for the output of their software. We're seeing similar things. I mentioned ghost guns before. We saw Luigi utilize a ghost gun, again, just pieces of code that you could download, but with a 3D printer turn into a very real weapon. Now, what's really interesting about this case, and a little juicy, is that recently the Fifth Circuit rejected the OFAC designation of Tornado Cash immutable smart contracts. This means that after being studied in the court of law, they found that OFAC could not actually sanction these smart contracts. They should be removed from the sanctions list. And this is because there is no operator, there's no central authority to it. These are autonomous. And this is very positive for Roman Storm's message. However, he still remains yet to be proven, right? He needs to prove his innocence and his position in the court of law. Now, there was some help. Recently, Matt Huang, co-founder of Paradigm, I got to give him props for this, in his time and his access to these newfound capabilities in Washington, D.C., he did speak on behalf of Roman Storm. Now, Paradigm did just donate about $1 point some million in change. There we go, 1.25 to his defense fund. So they are putting their money where their mouth is. And let's be real, if Roman gets found guilty, that means that they could retroactively go after anyone that writes code for this technology. Blockchain gets very dangerous when you start to overlay money laundering protocols. We don't want to fall into that category. So this is really fundamentally important to how we view the First Amendment in respect to what can happen in the technological age, the information age, in which information can truly be given a life of its own. Now, this was always the case. You used to write a book and .exe was somebody else reading it, right? Their brain would process it and you would spread ideas. But now we can automate that. We can have the machines execute these ideas into something more tangible. And it's just another battle in the grand scheme of the US, but really important. Now, what's fascinating and coming out today, Paul Grewal, the chief legal officer of Coinbase, has been pushing back on the government to clarify this. He's gone up against the U.S. Treasury, which has yet to remove Tornado Cash from the OFAC list, right? It should be at this point in time that it is, since it can't be sanctioned, that was the Fifth Court's ruling, that it has to be removed from this list. However, it hasn't. So he's coming to terms basically saying that they're breaking the law in order to try to establish the law. And that is not an appropriate mechanism. So Coinbase is actually further pursuing from Congress the unequivocal instruction that they got from the Fifth Circuit Court in the first place. This is really fascinating. And we are seeing this new era in which the industry is firm enough, well-funded enough, and confident enough to push back on these fundamental rights issues. I really hope that Roman Storm can avoid jail time. I don't think that he was involved in any direct money laundering, and he did write programs that can be used in a variety of ways. We're going to just see that to be recurring through especially cryptocurrency, which deals with value and money transmission and everything that we built around the financial world, but we'll also get into more nefarious conflicts when we can 3D print, when we can basically teleport through the digital space. So this is really foundational to how do we translate ideas to reality and how do we treat the people along that spectrum of release. Anyway, best of luck to Roman Storm. It does seem like things are at least unfolding somewhat in his favor, even though this is a really tough battle. And thank you so much to Paul Grewal and Coinbase for backing him up on this, because that must be just utterly terrifying. For everyone else, good luck, and I'll see you tomorrow.